What's shaking, guys? Luke Dancy here. I'm coming at you from my computer to your computer, or maybe I'm coming to you from your cell phone. Welcome to today's chat with Alon New. I'm going to get to him in just a sec because we got some winners from last week. If you've never joined us before, we give away free magic every single week. Last week, you guys had a chance to win your choice of any at the table lecture. All you had to do was like and comment on last week's show. Our winner from Facebook was Timo Samola. Congrats to Timo. And congrats as well on our YouTube channel to Gonzalini. Gonzalini over on YouTube. Congrats to both of those guys. They both pick up their choice of any at the table lecture that they want. And today we are going to chat with one of the best mentalists in the world. Just opened up his show on the Las Vegas Strip before all this stuff happened. We'll talk more about that with Alon New. How we doing, Alon?
Hey, how's it going? Good to see you.
It's really good to see you too, man. I know that I saw you a little bit before all this happened. We went to see the Chris
Yeah.
Angel show and hung out some. And yeah, all this stuff is just wild. Why don't we just jump to the elephant in the room here, which is, and then we'll get to know you more. You just opened your show on the Las Vegas Strip. It literally just did open, maybe like 2 weeks before all this, right?
I did just open it, yes.
And you're over at the Oyo.
January 17th, Friday, January 17th. And after that, it was every Thursday through Monday. So 5 nights a week. I was there, 8 o'clock, hoping to bring it back. It's kind of crazy. It's an unprecedented time here in Las Vegas history. Just before we went on, we were talking about how the Luxor light is probably off. And when you live in Las Vegas, sometimes if you get lost in Las Vegas, you can actually find your way back to wherever you need to be just by finding the Luxor light pointing at the sky.
It's kind of like the North Star. We were mentioning that, yeah. So it's definitely weird times. We have a lot of magicians.
The Fremont experience completely closed down. It's crazy to to walk through Fremont experience and not see any of the canopy above you. That's nuts.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It's a very surreal thing in Vegas, seeing everything shut down. There's a lot of entertainers, magicians that are unfortunately unable to do what they do best, which is to be on stage and do their performing. What kind of message would you like to send out to all those guys? Because then we have a lot of them watching now, especially because of what's going on. From one entertainer to another, what kind of wisdom? Because you are a very wise guy. You're very wise.
I am a wise guy, aren't I?
Yeah.
Let's see. I'd say for the most part, try to reach out to the people who you know and the people you love. Try to share with them your magic. I've been doing a lot of Facebook Live streams recently, and although it's one of those things that I never really got the hang of doing it on a regular basis, but ever since the beginning of the dark nights of Las Vegas, I decided that, hey, I'll try to reach out to people who I know, and we'll start small and we'll work from there. And so what I found is that whenever I perform anything that is magic related or mentalism or anything that's going to amaze people, from where I am to where they are, in this world of social distancing, it's interesting that mentalism and some magic effects really do translate very well to a live internet audience. So that's been a fun little experience, and it's been kind of interesting to me just because there is this space of which you only have like this much space to perform in, and then suddenly suddenly that becomes your theater, that becomes the space that you're working in, and you can learn a lot from just by doing that, and just by hearing or just reading the comments as to how they respond and stuff like that. And what I found is that there's a lag time between
Yeah.
the time that I ask them for information and the time that they're giving me the information, and I'm going to say that lag time, and I believe it's because the bandwidth of social media bandwidth is much less than, say, YouTube and Netflix and stuff like that. So ultimately, it's just about trying to work within that paradigm. Realize that it's going to take about 20 seconds before the people answer you, and I'm still in that mode of learning the entire curve. And but I think that it's fun to, now that we have the time to do it, why not just take some time to reach out to our local following, the people who are already following us, and see if we can broaden that a little bit by sharing a little bit of magic,
Yep.
and at the same time recognizing where we're at, recognizing the times that we're in, and being able to let people know that you're there to help you in any way that you can, whether it be just moral support, or whether it be anything that you might have to offer them from where you are. I mean, obviously we can, it's hard to go off and visit people,
Yeah.
in front of them, but there's a lot that you can do, and there's a lot of advice that I know that I can give if I were to, if someone were to reach out to me. And so, I offer myself to any of you all to, if you have a question about being a performer, or being a mentalist, or
It's cool.
something about myself, or something about yourself that you think I might be able to answer, any of those things can potentially open up a whole new conversation.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you being here. I know that we were planning on doing this with you being here in Vegas, but you went back east, which kind of gives us a chance to talk about more of who you are and what brought you out to Las Vegas. Because I have a lot of guys on here, a lot of different people I interview. They're specialists in a lot of different things. And you are definitely one of the top mentalists in the world. I'm excited. I'm back to back mentalist. I got
I
Colin
have a
Clout
few
next week, and
specialties.
you know, you've been on TV. You know, you were on TLC. I was doing my homework on you on TLC. You're a creator of magic. I remember seeing you lecture in Charlotte, North Carolina, many moons ago.
I have published many a thing in many different periodicals all over the world.
Yep. Yes, you have. And one of your friends and colleagues, V, is here. I
Oh,
got to know
nice.
him a little bit over the last few days. He says that Alon is absolutely wise, really good guy in general, genuinely just a good guy. It kind of infects you, and you see it in his performances. And I'll agree to that 100%. Yeah. It's,
Yeah, V's my homie.
so,
V's out here in the DC area. We can't see each other or hang out
oh, yeah.
because we're self quarantining. And the other message I'd like to say is that, if you're against the entire quarantining
Mhm.
concept, please please at least play along with what's going on, because I don't think that the virus is a myth, and I don't think it's a hoax, and I think that we really need to kind of, at this point, stay inside and stay away from each other. And
Yep.
if you're going to be performing, perform, use the medium that we now have. What's interesting about this is that I've found that I can reach out to more people than I ever thought I could
Mhm.
before, and people who I haven't ever FaceTimed with are now FaceTiming with me, and it made me realize that, as a consultant, or as a script writer, or as a person who can help you with your show, or I'd be able to do any of those things, and we would have the medium of literally speaking through Facebook Live, or through or excuse me, through Facebook Messenger, or through Skype, or through FaceTime, and
Yep.
it would be just as good as having me right there in person in front of you. The only thing
Yep.
you couldn't see is, or couldn't do, is have me share with you something where I'd need to, like, actually grab your hands or whatever. But I mean, that would be, we wouldn't need to do that anyway, in my opinion.
Yeah, and it's cool. You've been doing a lot of interactive stuff online too. Maybe you'll do something here. I don't know. I'm just saying. But we had a question for you.
Oh, good.
And of course, guys, that's why we do these things live. So if you want to ask anything, that's why we're here. Nigel Quinn's got a good question coming in. Our friend from
Hey,
Facebook.
Nigel.
He says, "Cool. What's been the biggest challenge as a mentalist to break into Vegas? So Vegas traditionally is more illusionist, kind of the big scale, stage stuff, and then there's a handful of mentalism on the strip. There's a handful of you guys. What do you think's been the biggest challenge trying to break into Vegas as a mentalist? That's a really good question.
The biggest challenge. I mean, really, I think that everybody who tries to break into Vegas feels like they need to know someone who knows someone,
Right.
or they need to they need to have like a contact that will get them in. Otherwise, or they need to get onto America's Got Talent
Hmm.
and get into a competition that'll offer them that particular gig. But I would say that probably the most important thing that any performer can do, whether you be a mentalist or a magician or any kind of performer, performing arts person, I would say, is to just try to raise your own um, marquee value, which is basically how people see you on the internet. So essentially, if if you were to get as many newspaper reporters doing stories on you as possible, if you were to be on the radio as much as possible, get bloggers to interview you as much as possible, and get as much internet exposure as much as possible. It's interesting. My manager, Clinton Billups, was telling me that there was this one comedian who actually was like a well-known comedian. I can't remember his name, but it's coming to me secondhand. But basically, he was saying that this very well-known comedian lost a job to another comedian who was just kind of coming up onto the scene, just because the younger comedian and the fresher comedian basically had like twice as many Facebook followers as the
Oh,
older comedian.
right.
And so just based on that, it's interesting that that the public perception of how people see other people is really internet based. And so my goal throughout my entire career has always been to try to be on as many, get myself on as many of these kinds of shows,
Sure.
or a radio show or any type of show that just kind of promotes me on the internet. And if you go to my Wikipedia page, you'll see that I've done a lot of stuff. I've been all over the place, and
Yep.
I've done a lot of different things. And so, but all of that was really for one purpose, and that one purpose was to raise my marquee value and get myself to this point where suddenly, it feels more likely that you're going to get a gig in Las Vegas, or more likely
Sure.
that you're going to get like a really high paying corporate gig, or more likely that you might find get into a theater somewhere. So I mean, it's really just about getting yourself popular enough to other people's perception, to the point where you can start asking for those types of things, or those things just start naturally coming your way. Frankly, is really what will more like happens. I'd say.
It's been, speaking of advertising, which someone said, a great, obviously, get yourself out there. It's been really, before all this stuff came down, it was really kind of surreal. You and I become kind of new friends. I knew you, but I didn't know you like I know you now. Really surreal to see someone that I know is a friend, like up on billboards and, all over the place in Vegas. I'm sure for you too.
Surreal to me.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I was for 4 years. I was performing at a little blues. Well, it's one of the institutions of Washington D.C., but it's a place called Madams, Oregon, and it's in this Adams Morgan district of Washington D.C. And Madams, Oregon's a blues bar, but on the second floor, there's like a you can do karaoke and stuff like that.
Oh,
And
yeah. Sure.
the owner basically approached me and said, "Hey, do you think you can make my Monday night a busier Monday night to bring in revenue at the second floor bar?" And I said, "I'll give it a try." And so I basically hooked up with another comedian, and the two of us started this show that originally was called The Dark Side, and then eventually it
That's great.
transformed into Hocus Jocus, which I still think is a dope name for a
Cool.
comedy magic
Yeah,
show.
that's cool.
And it still exists over at Madams, Oregon. Well, I should say it's been put on hold because of everything that's going on,
Yeah. Yeah.
but up until just recently, it was still going even after I left. I was really proud of doing that, and that was for 4 years of doing that. And suddenly, this Vegas showroom shows up, and flying to Vegas, Ubering to my new place of residence and seeing this huge ass billboard and thinking to myself, man, stuff got real. So
Yes, it did, sir. Yes, it did. Had some other great questions coming in. You guys are awesome. So many great questions for Alon here. I'm going to back it up a little bit. This was a good one. Rohan McCourt
hey,
uh,
Rohan.
over on YouTube um, says, I love your work. He's watched your show at Wizards in Orlando, so he saw you down there in
Oh,
Orlando.
nice. That
He
was a
wants
fun show. I had a good time there.
That's the
Eric
Eric
Olson
Olson
is an
place,
awesome
right?
dude. Hey, Eric.
Yeah, that's the Eric Olson place, I think. What are your thoughts on combining mentalism with magic? And that's something I would love to know too, because you are definitely uh, all about the mentalism. But how do you feel about combining it with magic, kind of mixing the two?
It's all the rage. um, I, I'm torn because I actually do love both.
Sure.
I grew up with magic. I grew up learning from many great magicians.
And I'm just going to say it right now because you're not going to say it. You've got some hella good chops too. You've got the hands. You can do some
Thank
really, really tough stuff. So I'll let you go on. But yeah,
I do. I am a closet technician.
true.
um,
I believe it.
but the bottom line is, uh, my manager likes me to kind of stay within the realm of just being a mentalist. And so, I mean, obviously, every single mentalist in the field, in the history of mentalism, and the way I like to kind of put myself into all that is I try to look at where they are. I look at the history of who they were, meaning people like Kreskin and Dunninger and the people that came before them, all the way back to the original Man Who Knows, Alexander. And so I mean, I feel like all of them had like a particular thing, and what they would do is they would oftentimes mix just a little hint of magic into their show. And so Kreskin, for instance, does the linking finger rings. And although you can imagine that perhaps the finger rings can melt ectoplasmically or something, I'd say that it feels more like an illusion than it
Sure.
feels like an actual mentalism effect. And yet, you know, so many mentalists have used the linking finger rings as an example of that. So I mean, Kreskin, Richard Osterland, Craig Cargis. I mean, they've all used the linking finger rings, and and in my opinion, it's an interesting choice just because it is kind of one of those really miraculous types of things, but I wouldn't call it mentalism per se. It's not really, it doesn't have anything to do with reading minds or
Right.
even necessarily mind over matter, although you can kind of bring it into that. And therein lies this other thing, which is that sometimes it's good to just do something novel. So sometimes you can look at, you know, your show as kind of being like a whole show in which you're doing all of this stuff that's the main stuff that you do, but then you throw in like the juggler. So like at the magic convention you have like that whole big show, but then suddenly there's that novel thing that happens in the middle, and he's the guy that does the crazy juggling act or something like that. So you can look as a mentalist at your show in that similar way, in which, you know, the magical effect that you do is kind of brought in this sort of novel way in order to accent the show, or punctuate the show with some sort of a message or some sort of a metaphorical anecdote or something like that. So I think that that's one way that you can mix it in, although to really fuse it together is not that easy, although I wouldn't say it's impossible. I mean, it's just not something that I personally have really explored. And in my show, I feel like I do a pretty good job of keeping it mostly mental, but I do bring in, you know, if I did bring in a magic effect, I would bring it in right at the very beginning, sort of like as an opening act to what I'm about to do. As similar, Dunninger used to do the Miser's Dream, as sort of like before the actual act started, he would do the miser's dream. So he's pulling coins out of people's ears and, making them blow their nose into a pail with coins falling out into a pail. So, I mean, that to me is not necessarily mentalism at all, right? But it does kind of give them, well, in my opinion, what it does is it really kind of lets people understand that they're in a show and that they're there to be entertained and that they're there to be amazed. And therefore, if those are the most important things, in other words, to be amazed and to be entertained, then then it doesn't matter what you do, so long as that's the point, right?
Yep.
So ultimately, as a mentalist, I would say first and foremost, you're an entertainer, and therefore you're there for the purpose of entertaining your audience, and therefore whatever you're going to give to them is ultimately, as an entertainer, what your audience wants. You want your audience to, you want to give the audience what it wants. They want to see mentalism. They want to see you read their minds. They want to see you give them strange paradoxes and synchronicities, and they want to have their mind blown at the very end. And when you do what you do, that's ultimately your goal. And if there's anything that you're doing that isn't going to amaze them, take it out. And if there's
That's
something
fair.
that you do that isn't going to entertain them while you amaze them, take it out. Edit your show and make your show so that your audience loves you, because that's the only way you're going to be able to entertain them.
Well said. So much knowledge dropping here. I hope you guys are paying attention here. Um, there was a follow up question here, and also something V said a little while back. I wanted to pull this up because this is true. I think it was V. He said, yeah, it was V. He says, talking about Elon, quote unquote, the Jesus of spoon bending.
Stop it.
That's a Scott. He said Scott Alexander said that, and he put some laughing emojis after that. So the legend exists. The legend of Alanu and spoon bending definitely exists. I've seen it myself, and I know the strength and the power of what you do, but you keep it quiet. So yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it.
Well, yeah, it's definitely a reputation maker. It's been part of my life since the late, I'm going to say the mid to late 80s was when it all kind of started.
Okay.
And then, and it was, I met James Randi in 1984, and he showed me a couple of things that were kind of interesting. I read the Ben Harris book, and that was it's actually a very good book, frankly. And then from there, I just kind of went hog wild with all kinds of stuff. Looked into all the Sawa material and all that stuff, and then it kind of turned into my own little rabbit hole.
Here's a quick question for you, since we're just chatting about mentalism, obviously. Michael King over on Facebook.
Hey, Michael.
Says playing cards in mentalism, yes, no, or maybe. That's a really good question because I know it's something that I've heard it a lot anyway. For mentalists, if they like card tricks or not. What are your thoughts on using card tricks with mentalism or kind of mixing it in there?
I don't have a problem with it personally. I mean, I think here's the thing. Okay, there is such a blurry area in terms of what mentalism is in relationship to magic, and so.
Yeah.
So when I've talked about this in so many other interviews and stuff like that, but I'll say it again, and that is, when you look at what we do, it's best to look at it from this sort of more meta viewpoint. So when you think about it, there's this whole arts and entertainment world, right? And then in the arts and entertainment world, you've got this teeny little sliver, and in that tiny sliver, we'll call that the mystery arts. And in the mystery arts, you've got people like magicians, but you also have other types of mystery artists that aren't just magicians. So it's a sliver of the arts and entertainment world that consists of magicians, but it also consists of mentalists. It consists of stage hypnotists. It consists of ghost hunters. It consists of seance mediums. It consists of fortune tellers, palm readers, sword swallowers, sideshow artists, a lot. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. And when you think about all of those things, it's not all magic. Those are each separate disciplines. Each one of us who are watching right now could probably sit down and learn any one of those disciplines and learn it for the rest of your life and master only that one discipline and become really great at that one discipline. Oftentimes, what we do is not that, though. Oftentimes, we choose multiple disciplines within the mystery arts in order to accent what we do. So sometimes a magician might borrow something from the mentalism world. Sometimes a mentalist might borrow something from the hypnosis world. Sometimes a fortune teller might borrow something from the mentalism world. And so all of this stuff really happens. And ultimately, what we end up with is what I'm going to call like the mixed mystery arts. And so when you think about it, it's kind of like you're trying to figure out the formula of what it is that best suits you to amaze people and either entertain them or give them an experience of some sort that's going to that will translate to you making a living. So somehow this is ultimately going to be about you doing something that's so valuable to other people that they want to help you make a living. So whether that be through barter or whether that be through them giving you money for shows, or whether that means you're going to get consultation fees or anything, that's based on the equation that you put together for yourself on how much magic you're going to put with that mentalism and how much hypnosis you're going to put in with that show, or how much of fortune telling you're going to add to that. And we experiment on all of those things these days. I mean, these days we've got the internet to our access, so everyone could technically know everything.
Yep.
But the only problem is that if you focus on too many different things and you don't focus on one thing, you end up not really becoming a master of anything. And so you really want to focus on, just maybe a couple of disciplines at first and see how well they fuse together. And then, and so let's say it is magic and mentalism, see how that plays for you. And then you might decide, maybe this mentalism stuff is a little bit too deep for me. Maybe my audiences just don't like that kind of stuff because of the way I normally play who I am, because if you're not the kind of guy who can go really deep with the type of performance that you're giving, then maybe mentalism isn't the thing. Because as soon as you start doing mentalism for people, people want to get into some pretty deep conversations with you. The next thing you know it,
They're
you're going to talk to
believers.
people about Bigfoot, right? It'll be crazy. So I mean,
Yeah.
people go into all kinds of concepts and parts of their imagination once they figure out that you do this stuff and it could be real, and so and that's the other thing about mentalism, is that mentalism is really not magic. It's not magic. Mentalism is really all about giving people the possibility of real powers, whereas magic is really more about giving people the entertaining them with the idea of completely impossible things. And so magic explores completely impossible things, and mentalism refers to potentially possible things. And so they are kind of different when you think about it in that way. And therefore, although mentalism can feel magical, so like when David Copperfield does the chalkboard, it's pretty freaking amazing. I have no idea how he can predict all those things, but but it feels magical. But at the same time, it doesn't necessarily give people the context of being able to produce that uh, experiment for real. So I mean, so basically, the way he plays it is really that this is part of his illusion show, and so it ultimately becomes one other amazing thing that he does among all of the other amazing things that he does, including fly through the air and and all that stuff. So I mean, so when Copperfield does a mentalism act, it is presented in the style of how an illusionist might present a mentalism act, which is to say, it's an illusion. And therefore, the thing that you're appreciating is the fact that it's amazing you. However, when a mentalism performs that same illusion, that mentalist might give you a little bit more context. So the context might have something to do with the fact that a lot of people predict the future. And if you recall within your own thoughts, you've probably predicted the future in some pretty uncanny ways in your life without even realizing how you did it. And that might make you wonder whether or not something like that could be real. And so when a mentalist presents something like that in the same context, what they're really doing is giving you the context in which you're doing it for real. So ultimately, you're you're being given this way of thinking about it, in which either it's completely either though it's potentially real for you, or it is something that they realize is a reference to something that is real. And so in my show, for instance, I personally don't care whether or not people, find what I do is real or not. I try to make what I do as amazing as possible. So I'm never going to not make it amazing. But I will say that, you know, as far as trying to convince people one thing or another, I'm not that interested in convincing. I'm more interested in entertaining them with the notions of what I'm doing than I am at trying to convince them one thing or another. I'm really, my feeling is that if I can mystify them with what I'm doing, and most of what I do will actually mystify people, then the next step is to just entertain them and make sure that they feel happy by the end of my show.
So here's a question from me to you. We have people out there at different levels. Some people are more close up oriented. Everyone's different. Um, if you were to recommend to someone that wants to get into mentalism the right way, what are
The
the,
right way.
yeah, like not just,
Follow me on Facebook, follow me
there
on
you go.
YouTube, follow me on
There you
social
go.
media.
Like what are
Read my
the,
books.
yeah, and like the
You
basic,
can't actually find my books, unfortunately, or I should say you can't actually easily find my books. You can find them on eBay, you can find them on the Magic Cafe, you can find them on Surplus Magic and stuff like that if you look real carefully. But but this coming weekend, I have a special lecture that I'm doing as part of this pandemic vacation that we are currently experiencing, and there a fellow by the name of Luca Volpe from Italy, who is an amazing
oh yeah,
Italian
saw this.
musician,
Yeah, right.
actually put together a virtual magic mentalism convention, and many big names are going to be part of that. And
Very cool.
ironically, I got part of that. I got to be part of that as well. So on my lecture will be on Sunday at 8 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time.
Cool.
So figure that one out yourself. Greenwich Mean Time I think that's Great Britain. I think
Yeah, that
that's
sounds right. Yeah. GMT time. Yeah,
so.
yeah. Cool. But like, are there any beginner resources if someone wants to go to like, if they're not advanced yet, if they really want to start learning mentalism? Like I've always recommended Corinda's 13 Steps to Mentalism. It's kind of known
Yeah.
as the Bible of
Yeah,
mentalism.
I personally find that, yeah, Corinda's 13 Steps to Mentalism is really amazing. I mean, I grew up on Bascom Jones Magic, and
Okay.
so that was like a publication, but it turned into like a 4 volume set that was put out by Collector's Workshop, and I'm sure it's a collector's item now. But I mean, a lot of the basically, this is the way I'll put it. Okay, if you're interested in mentalism, read as many mentalism periodicals as you possibly can. And so try to belong to mentalism journals. Try to find where the latest and greatest are. And although I'm not generally the person to say, just look out for the latest and greatest, because I tend to not care about what's going on in terms of what's going on in the latest and greatest. But I will say this: everything that is the latest and greatest is based on stuff from the past. And therefore, if you just go ahead and let yourself get caught up in the wave of what's fun and interesting in the world of mentalism right now, feel free to go in that direction. But try to look up the reference of where it comes from and try to find out who that author was and see if that author might have come up with some other things that you might be interested in. Because what you might find is that the authors of certain creations are people who might jive with you. And so another great person who I would recommend besides Corinda's and stuff like that would be Barry Richardson. I would say that if you read any or all of the 4 volumes of Barry Richardson's books, they're great. It teaches you how to engage your audience. It gives you context in terms of the story that you might use or might not use, depending on whether or not it fits you. He always takes an old idea that is worth looking into, and he almost always improves it in some interesting way. And so you're always going to, in my opinion, you really want to look out for entertainers and performers and artists who are known for being hardcore researchers
Sure.
and who can take those old school ideas and convert them into something that's much stronger and much more amazing. And what you realize is that what you realize is that some people are really good at improving effects, and some people are not so good at improving effects. And my only suggestion to all of you would be to use your psychic intuition to find out who you think is just the person who you should follow, and just who you think is the perfect person who you think would take you in the direction that you want. Because not everyone is going to be your cup of tea, right? Some people aren't. I was really influenced by Christian Chelman at an early age. So I mean, when I say early age, I'm going to say around when I was around 30 or so. I ended up reading Christian Chelman's Capricornian Tales and just loved that book. And now that book isn't for everyone, because Christian Chelman's a bizarrist, and so he was like all into like esoterica and strange stuff like that. But that's my bag. That's the stuff that I'm into, and so I grew really fond of that stuff. And then suddenly I got a chance to meet Christian Chelman, and then suddenly I realized that dude. Talk about a dude with chops. That dude has some serious chops. That dude has chops that you've never even seen before. And I have to say, I got to spend like a week with him. He's like one of the guys who I feel like was one of my true jet propulsion engines into becoming a much greater performer. In terms of just being able to appreciate methods, being able to appreciate creativity with methods and stuff, Christian takes everything to the next level, and it's cool to see somebody like that. And as such, a lot of the stuff that I do, I try to explore the concept as much as I possibly can. If you've read any of my manuscripts, I have. I'll take some time to talk about some of my old manuscripts at this point. I've had the first one that got put out was called Astrologic, which is basically all of the work that I ever did on being able to divine someone's zodiac and subsequently their exact birthday. And that was actually part of my influence from Christian Chelman came from that. In his first book, Capricornian Tales, he actually talks about an effect that was originally a card trick that was actually able to pinpoint a person's birth date without ever having known them before, no pre-show or anything like that. After that, I developed Astrologic, or actually, it was during that time that I was already developing Astrologic. As soon as he gave me permission to add that one part into the system, it took it to a new level as far as I was concerned. From there, I went to any card, which is all my work on the any card at any number principle. It's not exactly any card at any number. It's really just more like a card at any number. But I think I play it. I feel like it's strong, and I feel like it goes along a philosophy that is my overall philosophy, across the board, which is basically I want nothing but strong, hard-hitting material that might not be easy to learn because it takes some doing, But once you learn it, it's in your head, and once it's in your head, you can do it with minimal preparation or zero preparation, and suddenly it becomes something that you can do at any point, at any time, and that's a beautiful thing. Because remember back in the days when there used to be brick and mortar magic stores. I know you remember, Luke, but some of you have never been to a brick and mortar magic store, but there are a few that remain. And back when I was a kid, so it was about 13 years old. I ending up being a demonstrator at a place called Dream Wizards in Rockville, Maryland. And at Dream Wizards, the two guys that ran the magic part of Dream Wizards was an interesting mentalist and Fortean philosopher by the name of Mark Chervinsky. And Mark ended up becoming this editor and publisher of Strange Magazine, which which had a pretty good circulation. David Lynch was one of the guys that was in our circulation. Lots of interesting stories. I learned a lot from being a part of that team. But Mark Chervinsky started Dream Wizards, and I was a demonstrator at Dream Wizards in the early days. The other guy who was Mark's best friend was then 24-year-old John Kennedy. And this was right after John Kennedy created the floating dollar bill. If anybody's ever seen a dollar bill float in the air, it's
Looks so good.
for no other reason other than the fact that Kennedy came up with that.
God, it's so
and
good.
so, and I remember, like back in those days when people saw that, they thought that they thought that they saw a miracle. It was one of the craziest things, and he had a couple of really nice ideas to that. I'm not even sure if he remembers them, but he had some really, really cool ideas. I being a young kid around some of these great performers like Kennedy and the Brook Farm Inn of Magic was here in Chevy Chase. So Bob Sheets and Steve Spill were basically running that whole thing. They brought in the likes of, people like Flip from Holland and people like Max Maven from California. And, so we got a lot of really amazing people coming through. And then, of course, we had Scotty York behind the bar. We had Larry Davidson, Nick DeCutis. They were kind of more local guys, but really, really talented guys. And to me, as a young, then 16-year-old, I would have to say that it felt to me like the closest thing to like the Justice League of superheroes, because it's like each one of those guys were slightly different in their style. Each one of those guys had a different power, like they each had like a different superpower. And then each one of those guys even dressed in different costumes. It's like, seeing Max Maven with his widow peak back in the 80s, that was crazy, right? I mean, it's like who has a widow peak like
Max
that,
Maven.
right? Nobody. He's like literally the guy that rocks the widow's
The
peak,
old Goldstein.
right? and then you got Flip, right? And he's like a crazy looking guy himself. And then Bob Sheets with just his crazy handlebar mustache at the time, and Steve Spill with his, sunglasses and white suit. And, at the time he was like super cool. He had really, really long hair back then. Now he cut his hair. But I remember him with the long hair. When I think of Steve Spill, I think of Steve Spill with long hair.
I had a question popping up real quick since you're kind of reminiscing a little bit. Tim Hall over on our we've got a little watch party going on.
Hey Tim, I know Tim. He's from Baltimore.
Okay. He wants to know if you remember Al's Magic on Pennsylvania and DC. Al's Magic.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay.
Of course.
Cool.
Al's Magic Al's Magic was the local magic store when I was growing up. It was Al's Magic, Barry's Magic in Wheaton, Maryland,
Okay.
and then Yogi's Magic Mart in Baltimore. Phil Thomas's Yogi's Magic Mart.
Cool.
And
very cool. Just going to look at another question here. This is going in a little
now
different.
There's no more. Now DC Baltimore has no more brick and mortar.
Zero, really.
After Denny's went down, I think Magic Warehouse in Baltimore also I think they went down. I think they kind of packed up. But I could be wrong, so sorry about that, Howard. I got that wrong. He's like, what are you talking about?
Let's see. Jordan would like to know, um, what is your
Hey,
take?
Jordan.
Yes, hello, Jordan. Um, what is your take and opinion regarding the Q&A act? Where do you think I should start practicing it as well to start shaping the routine? So first, your thoughts, and if someone is interested, what kind of resources would they look at to even learn how to do it?
Psychic Q&A is an interesting subject. It's something that I don't actually do in my show necessarily, although I do have a certain weird philosophy around it, and I continue to grow with my own thoughts behind psychic Q&A. My when I talk about it, it's almost like I always say psychic Q&A because, in my personal opinion, the idea of Q&A probably came from mentalists in the earlier days. Hard to say exactly where it came from, but eventually, when when people started to study being legitimate psychics, I would say that Q&A also became a thing among them.
Mm,
And so, what I find is interesting about Q&A is that people just want answers, right? They really just want answers to whatever it is that they're going through. They want answers about their relationships. They want answers about their finances. They want answers about their opportunities in the future. They want answers to where they might be traveling to or something like that. But I mean, generally, if they're thinking about where am I going or what's my son's name or stuff like that, they're kind of like they're challenging you, right? So I mean, so so usually when somebody really truly wants like a really heartfelt answer, it usually has something to do with love or romance. It has something to do with betrayal. It might have something to do with potential job opportunity or some kind of a windfall or something like that. They want to know about their fortune and whether or not they're going to make lots of money. Or they might want to know about someone's health. They might want to know about their own health. They might be worried about something that's going on in their own health, or they might be worried about something that's going on in somebody who they love's health.
sure.
And so those are the things that they're ultimately going to be focusing on. And in my opinion, that's not a whole lot of things, in my opinion. That's really just a few things for and so my feeling is that when I look at people, I can almost intuit what they are going through, and through just a little bit of communication, I'm pretty much going to find myself right in that zone if I go there. My problem with it as an entertainer is, frankly, I don't really feel like I personally don't feel like going there. I personally feel like people's private matters are their own private matters, and so if they're coming here to be entertained and I'm forcing them to ask me a question about themselves, that's kind of like it's getting into their zone in a way that
Yeah.
I don't feel that I've never totally felt comfortable with. Now again, it's still something that I feel like I'm evolving with. So I'm not necessarily somebody who disagrees with it 100%. But a couple of things that have entered my mind about Q&A is that, like, most of the times when you see a mentalist do Q&A, they have people write down their questions, and oftentimes they write down the questions in order to emphasize in their mind what their question is and stuff like that. But my feeling is that those people who come with a question, why do they necessarily need to write it down? So I mean, my feeling is that, and furthermore, if somebody really has a question, then they really have a question. And
Hmm.
so my feeling is that, why do you need to get them to write down the question if they have a question? why
I
can't you
agree
just
100%.
why can't you just cut to the chase and say, what's your question?
Yeah.
Because if you ask them what the question is, then all you need to do is give them an answer. And so sometimes you can actually give people, you can intuit the right types of answers. And And I don't recommend this for people who aren't experienced. I've been a certified hypnotherapist, and I've gone through a lot of training in terms of being able to understand how people in different states of mind. So I don't necessarily recommend that people who don't understand how to do that give advice that isn't sound. But I would say that you can almost intuit a good educated answer in which you can give people that and you can intuit pretty much what anyone's thought is. And frankly, in the end, you can just ask them what their question is. And so my feeling about a mentalist performing psychic Q&A in their show is that every person that they meet, everything that they do has something to do with the psychic Q&A. So I mean, whether you're actually getting people to write down their questions or not before the show or whatever, my feeling is that I've always thought to myself, you could say at the very beginning of the show something to the extent of, a lot of people who've come here might have come here with a particular question that they want, the man who knows to answer. And therefore, if you have a question, then think about that question, and when you have a moment, ask him that question, and he'll answer that for you. So there's a possibility also that somebody might say, well, can you just tell me what the question is? In which case, now you can now, in my opinion, now is a good time to see if you can intuit what that question is, because the worst that can happen is you'll be wrong. And so, in my opinion, being wrong is part of doing what we do, because if what our goal is as a mentalist is to give people the exploration of what could possibly be real, then there's a very good chance that you could be wrong. It's not a 100. It's not always 100%. So I mean, my feeling is that so in my opinion, the best place to find yourself is in a place that comes from sincerity. So it's a place in which if you authentically truly believe that you're giving good advice to the people that you're who are asking you the question, then then that's the best that you can do. And you can always say that you might not be right. You can always question yourself in terms of your answers, but in the end, I know I didn't totally answer the question as far as like the Q&A, but I'm just going to say that. But that's how I feel about the questions, and so that's how I feel about how to answer the questions. And in my opinion, that's the only part that's important. So the idea of writing them down and then somehow being able to determine the questions that they're asking you before you give them the answers, it's just kind of like, I personally feel like I'd be more interested in doing something that was truly that showed them some kind of interesting, baffling kind of synchronicity or something like that, and then in the meantime simultaneously connect with them while doing something else, and then say, oh, by the way, I'm sensing da 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 da, and then you can kind of move in there gently, because I feel like if you go there too quickly, if suddenly you're starting to say things like, I'm sensing that you're going to have twins, it's just going to be a little bit weird. I feel like, you want to be able to make your choices not be so wild and potentially potentially incorrect.
Well said, sir. Well said. Here's a question that's a real quick one for you. Comes from Wojo over on YouTube. We are watching YouTube as well, guys, so keep dropping those questions in. He says, and this is one of V's friends, I think. Do you think people see magic tricks and mentalism as the same thing? Now, I know we talked earlier about mixing magic type of things with your magic, but from an audience standpoint, when you perform, and here's another quick question before you do that. When you go on stage, are you Alon New the person, or are you Alon New the character? Yes or no? Which one? Yes or no?
Okay, so to answer the first question, it depends on who it is. So some people who hear the word mentalism hears the word from a magic context, in which case, they're going to think it's a magic trick. And some people who think of mentalism or who hear the word mentalism for the first time might go, "Oh, I wonder what mentalism is." And then they have to try to discern for themselves what it is. And then they might say, but maybe that has something to do with being psychic or something like that. I don't know. And then they go and see a mentalism show, and then they get what they get. And depending on who the mentalist is will determine how they end up feeling about the mentalist in the end. So to answer the question of whether or not people think of it as magic or mentalism, I'm going to say that some people, it just depends on the mentalist. Sometimes, I'm going to say a lot of mentalists that people see, people walk out feeling like they just saw, an elaborate magic show. Somebody on TripAdvisor said basically who didn't know who the man who knows was, left my show and said it was a really entertaining show, gave me 5 stars, and then said if I had to guess, he's somewhere between a cross between a comedian and a magician.
Interesting.
So I mean, my feeling is,
Wow.
and that's the thing, is that when I perform what I perform, I'm really not performing for any other reason other than to get laughs and to make them entertain, to make them feel entertained and to make them feel like they saw a great show by the end. So I mean, so as far as I'm concerned, that answer was correct. In many ways, I am a cross between a comedian and a magician. I try to make people laugh and I try to amaze them. And if I were to take it one step further, I would say I try to inspire them. I try to give them something to feel like they might be able to, inspire upon, something that may give them a good idea, or something that may alter the way they think about things.
Very cool. I'm digging this. So many great topics been coming up. I got a couple more for you, and then I'll start to let you go. We're almost hitting the top of the hour here, so time flies when we do these, man.
I
It
know,
really
right?
does. Yeah, it really does. Mark Weinbrow would like to know. Let me bring up his. He's from
Hey,
Facebook.
Mark.
And also want to give a big shout out to Mark. He's on the front lines of a lot of this stuff. He's over in the UK. He's working over at one of the hospitals over there. So want to give him some love for doing all that. That's a big thing. Mark wants to know, where do you get your ideas from, and how do you develop those ideas further? So as a mentalist, where is it that you're getting the ideas from to do the things that you do?
I like anything that's good.
I hope so.
I don't like the shitty ideas. I like all the I actually like all ideas. So I mean, so here's the thing. I try to make all of the ideas that I'm interested have some context in terms of who I am and what I'm doing. So I am not prone to do paddle tricks, necessarily. Although, personally, I love the technique. I love what you can do with paddle tricks. I like the move. I like the paddle move. But that's, I don't do things that necessarily disappear and reappear in other places per se. I mean,
Sure.
as a magician, if I were to perform if I were to say that I'm going to do a magic trick, I might do something like that. But in my show, the context of my show doesn't involve something like that. But so how do I come up with the ideas that I come up with is first, I try to take an interest in other mentalism premises. And I also try to take an interest in other magic premises that I think are interesting that might be able to be applied to being a mentalist. So I'm not necessarily closed-minded to anything other than the fact that that if the principle or the technique interests me, then I might go there. And so when I go there, what I try to do is I try to improve that particular technique. And so I have a funny joke with Scott Alexander where every time we talk about anything, we usually like come up with some way of improving it. And usually by the end of that conversation, we go fixing magic every day, and it's literally what we do. It's like we take an idea, we think about it, we try to think about how it can fit into the best context that it is in, and once we feel like we've done enough to solve that problem, we go fixing magic every day. So, but I mean, but here's the thing. Okay, so I think that every single effect has like a little Easter egg inside of it. So I think that whether it be the paddle move, or whether it be, one ahead, or whether it be, any principle that you may know about, you can think about it long enough to suddenly realize there's a completely different way of thinking about it. And when you come up with that way, it might be groundbreaking. It might actually take that concept to a whole new way of thinking about it. And so, so any of my manuscripts, so regarding like, the astrological divination manuscript. I mean, that whole manuscript is how to impromptu and without any props be able to divine someone's astrological sign and birth date. And it uses the principle that probably most of you are familiar with. However, what I've done is I've taken that same principle and I've basically just streamlined it, and I've given you different ways of being able to use it. So I've created like multiple applications, and as well as I was able to come up with other variations of the same premise. With any card at any number, same kind of thing. It's kind of like it's one idea in which you can use in multiple different ways. With regards to any of the other principles, my most recent manuscript is a bunch of stuff on ESP cards, and my alias was Homer Arcana. So H Arcana is basically the name that I kind of let the internet understand that's that's who's selling the stuff. But it's really my work that goes through him. And these days, or at least I tried to do that at one time in my life, and and at this point, so that particular manuscript is 10 different effects of things that you can do with 10 ESP cards. So 2 sets of 5 ESP cards repeating, 10 different effects that you can do. And it basically harkens back to my love for the packet card trick. And so
cool.
We all grew up with Emerson and West if you're my age or 10 years younger. What other questions we got? How much time do we have?
I got a couple more minutes here. Yeah, so maybe 2 more questions. This one's a good one. Comes in from Eric Stevens. Eric's another Vegas friend. I think you know Eric.
Hey,
now, yeah.
I'm friends with Eric and Luna.
Yes, and Luna, that's right. What, in your opinion, is the worst thing you've ever created? But more importantly, what did you learn from it?
The worst thing that I ever created, and what did I learn from it?
It's a deep question for Alon Nu. It's deep.
That's a weird question, Eric.
We'll just move right along to the next one then.
I have a love affair with every effect I've ever created. I don't know if I can come up with something that's the worst thing that I ever created. I will say that what did I learn from it? Well, there are lots of things that I have, obviously come up with that I didn't like in the end. And usually they leave my memory relatively fast, just simply because they're kind of, they're dumb ideas. And so every idea that I come up with, man, that's hard to think on your toes for that one, Eric. Worst thing I ever came up with. Here, how about this? I'll tell you one of the most. I'll tell you the oldest thing I ever came up with. Okay.
Sure.
And it did teach me something. So this kind of gives you an idea.
Okay.
So back in the early days, the popular effect that many people know about is the ultra mental deck, aka the invisible deck routine that everybody uses. And when I was younger, I ended up, I think I was 18, 19 years old around that time. I ended up getting a job at the Hayloft Dinner Theater in Manassas, Virginia. And the Hayloft Dinner Theater was where David Williamson got his start. Basically, we would open the show, and then we'd walk around and do close-up magic during dinner. And so basically what we'd do is we'd walk up on stage, we'd do a short little presentation on stage, about 10 minutes, and then we'd introduce the buffet, and then these curtains would open up, and these 2 buffets would be there, and people would all applaud for their food, and then they'd go and get their buffet, and then I would walk around and entertain tables as they were finishing up their meals. And so that was basically the drill that David started and that I continued at the Hayloft Dinner Theater. And it was during that time that I was playing the Invisible Deck premise, and I looked at my watch and I said, "This will take a couple of minutes to transform that watch and that deck of cards into a real deck of cards. So give me a second." And then somebody said, "I like your watch. Did you get it at the same store as the cards?" And I thought, okay, well that'll go right into my show. And so, and then after that, I thought to myself, I wonder if there's a way to get a watch, an actual watch, onto my wrist, so that by the time they saw the cards, suddenly in a sort of misdirected moment, they would notice that the watch was actually on my wrist. And I came up with a method of being able to do that. And that is actually published in one of my manuscripts. And so,
All right.
but that effect basically taught me, or that particular doing that basically taught me, number one, that I don't have to always follow the instructions in order to create an amazing effect.
Mm-hmm.
And number two, it taught me that misdirection can be used in an assortment of different ways, and it doesn't have to just be used for card under glass or the ways that or a watch steal or something like that. You can literally do a backwards watch steal in which you're not even stealing the watch off of somebody else's wrist, but literally loading a watch onto your own wrist during the time that the misdirection is taking place.
And he
So
says,
that's my roundabout way of answering the question that I cannot answer by Eric Stevens.
he
So
says,
thanks, Eric.
he says, sorry for asking the tough questions. Um, I've got two quick questions for you. One, do you see another TV show in the future for you? You've done TV on TLC. You've done it. Is that something that?
Yes, it's going to happen.
All right.
It's going to happen.
Very good. Very good.
Think positively.
Yes, as we can see above on the other shot, you're doing the man who knows. We got to do the positive vibes. Positive vibes. And then this is another kind of quickie. Is Renee? How do you feel about using the latest technology for minimalism in your act? Are you a fan of, you know,
any of the newfangled stuff?
Yeah.
Yes and no.
Okay.
I don't want to ever be so old as to start feeling like I have to denigrate things that are new. And so I will always be open-minded enough to accept any new technology that may help me with what I do. However, I will say this: I don't like things that are. I don't generally like things that are that way, just because there's a learning curve in learning that stuff. And I feel like almost everything that it offers me is stuff that I can already do without having to use any of that stuff. And so there are times in which, if I feel like there's something that it offers me that I can't do otherwise, then I'm open to it. It's one of the things that I say in my show, which is kind of like the way I get around the disclaimer thing, because people say, you should really disclaim yourself and stuff. And so there's just this point in my show in which I basically say, there's a common misconception that every single thing that I might perform in my show might have something to do with some kind of psychological gambit or neurolinguistic programming or some kind of, verbal control. And the truth is that pretty much every mentalist will try to amaze you from the stage to where you are there in your seats with literally anything and everything. But not every single thing is 100% psychological. Sometimes there's an out of left field thing that does happen that we have no control over. And those are the moments that we're going to try to recognize and ride to the best of our ability. And so right there, I just gave you everything that you need to know in order to entertain my show without having to think anymore. Sure. And it lets them know that I will literally do anything and everything in order to amaze them. And that is my entire goal. My entire goal is to just try to amaze people and to to keep them entertained for the hour and 15 minutes that I have them. But otherwise it's and here's, I'm going to answer one more question or or I'm going to just kind of complete the question that I gave last time with regards to effects having like an Easter egg inside of them, because I have talked about this on other shows,
Okay.
and that is that I think that every effect can actually contain a perfect way of performing it. And so really, really try to, and I know I said this a little bit before, but really take any idea and think about just how you would tweak it, just how you would actually, think to start maybe with a little bit of discontent. Ask yourself, what don't I like about the effect? And then ask yourself, what can I not live without for that effect? Like what do I really love about that effect? What are its strong points? And then from that point, just try to diminish the parts of the effect that are weaker that in your mind, and then try to accent and enhance all of the parts of the effect that are stronger. And so a good example of that, which which I'll just kind of give you the premise of. I won't necessarily give you the full effect, but basically the classic mentalist newspaper tear effect is something that I've been working on a lot recently. I don't know if you got a chance to see me do it while I was in Vegas, but it ended up hitting my show like within the last week before Las Vegas shut down. I started doing it, and it was playing really, really strong.
Cool.
But one of the ways that it plays strong is that, whenever anybody else ever did it in the past, it was always they tear the newspaper in half and they'd say, okay, so you get a choice between the piece in my left hand or the piece in my right hand.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would do it again and again and again and again until eventually you end up predicting a word. And in my opinion, number one, that's a long way to go to predict one word. So how do you make it entertaining in such a way so that the word that you predict is somehow relevant to what's going on to such a strong degree that it would make sense for the entire show?
Mm-hmm.
And then the second part is, I feel like when you've got a newspaper, there's like lots of stuff that's going on in the world right now. And although as an entertainer, oftentimes you're trying to kind of take people away from all the problems that they're currently having. However, there is a newspaper; it's right there. So when you tear that newspaper in half, why not just kind of go, okay, so you've got a choice between, okay, Elon Musk mission to Mars or Vladimir Putin mission to the White House. Which one would you choose? And so if you add that kind of flavor to the effect, and if you add some context to the effect that you're working on, then it might just kind of bring you into take you to a place in which you've improved the effect greatly, and it might be from a creative way, it might be through a context way, it might be through a methodical way, and I try to hit it from all angles. Usually when I try to come up with a new idea, I first start with one angle, and then I say, okay, so now how can I hit it from the methodical angle? And then how can I hit it from the presentational angle? How can I make this funny? How can I add some lines to it that'll make it interesting for people? What kind of context am I going to put this in? And so, the other thing about the newspaper tear for me is the final word answers a question. So basically, I have a spectator ask, so it becomes sort of like Q&A in and of itself. Spectator asks a question, and the final word actually answers the question at the very end. So that was my way of dealing with that particular effect, right?
Right.
And similarly, I have different ways of approaching the book test. I have a couple of manuscripts on book test work. Word Work 1 and Word Work 2 are both out of print, but literally Word Work 1 is nothing but book tests of which all the books are examinable in the end.
Oh, wow.
You can give them away at the very end.
That's cool.
And then Word Work 2 is basically all the books can be literally taken right off the shelf of a library or somebody's house or whatever, and you can work with those. So,
nice. Very cool. I want to give you one quick comment that someone said here too. Looking at one of the groups, Michael Kent says, Alon, you were the first person to tell me to use a handheld mic, so thank you. So
nice. He's mentioned that to me before. Good to hear from you, Michael.
Cool. So
I met Michael on the college market. He's always been an entertaining guy, and friend of mine in the college world.
Very cool. Yeah, I wanted to make sure to get some love in there too. Let me check one more spot, make sure I'm not missing any last things here. And then we will go ahead and wrap this up. As I always tell people, the plan is usually to go about half an hour, 45 minutes latest, but, we're at an hour plus now, and it really does go quick. So appreciate the time today.
Hey, can I make a quick plug?
Go for it, man.
Hey, so I'll just say that I've made an announcement earlier on Facebook Live, and it kind of came spontaneously. And it's really just because I have this lecture coming up for the virtual mentalist convention that's taking place this weekend. And what I announced is that if somebody wants to show me any kind of love via buying one of my manuscripts, which is a $50 price tag. Normally it's $50 plus postage, but right now I'm going to go ahead and let them go for flat $50 anywhere in the world. I will send you any one of my manuscripts, or you can buy as many of them as you want. I think I have a total of 7 different manuscripts. I got one on serial number divinations. I've got one on I've got 2 on book tests. I've got one on the anti-cardinal number. I've got one on the astrological divination. I've got one on a back in time. Literally a time travel effect that is really totally amazing. So if anybody wants to send me any type of $50 or more donation, I will send you a book or more, and I will also make you an honorary student of mine for the rest of the year, so you can contact me through via Skype or Facebook Live or Facebook Messenger, and just ask me questions, and I'll be happy to take you through the training course of what I do to give you an idea of just how you can actually learn to be a better mentalist, how you would be able to learn the material that I learned, which is all based on literally having just minimal preparation, minimal if not impromptu work, and something that would be able to play large and play big, whether it be close up or on stage. So that's my offer to the world: is any $50 manuscript goes a long way in that you become an instant student of mine in terms of learning what I do, and in order to help me kind of expand upon my legacy as a performer.
Absolutely. And all of us are waiting for all of this stuff to end in the world, obviously. And I look forward to when you make it back out to Vegas. I'm certain.
Me too.
I'm certain that, things will pick back up right where you left off. So if you guys are coming out to Vegas later this year, keep an eye out for the show above Alon's head there, the man who knows. It is at the Oyo. We're just all in a waiting period right now as far as anything.
That's right. The Oyo right across from MGM.
Yeah.
Second floor. It's called the Attic Showroom. And I will be back. My promoters are very confident that it's going to happen, and my car is still in Las Vegas. So
there you go. You have to come back one way or another. You'll be back here. So it's not every day, guys, that we get a chance to chat with a Las Vegas headliner. So if you haven't yet, make sure to show some love in the comments for Alon, and just let him know that's how he knows that you enjoyed this too. And obviously he's very active on Facebook too, so make sure to keep up with him there. So
yeah, Instagram, Facebook. Instagram, Alon_new. Twitter, Alon @Alon_new.
You know what we should do for a few minutes after this, if you're up for it? We should hop on Instagram. Why don't you and I hop on Instagram and chat for like 15 minutes or so? If you're up for it. If not, if you got to go, you got to go. But maybe
we can do it.
Well, after show. Sure. Yeah, so we can help.
I'm happy to do a post show on Instagram.
Yeah, maybe do that for a few minutes. Okay, cool. So, and Greg Gleason, you're out there. He's giving you some.
Hey, Greg.
This is a great hour. I'd love to bring Greg on one of these down the road sometime too. All the illusion talk, and he's got all that what's the guy? Doug Henning has got like all this Doug Henning stuff at his house. It's crazy, man.
Oh wow.
Yeah, it's nuts. So, but Alon, thank you so much for your time. Please be safe.
Hey,
we'll chat.
Thanks
after
for watching, guys.
Wrap this up. So yeah, maybe look for us on YouTube. Maybe or on Facebook or Instagram. Look for us there. We might pop up. You never know. Keep an eye out. So Alon, thank you again, and I'll talk to you very soon, my friend. Thank you.
All right.
There you go, my friends. I am back inside the computer that's looking through your computer. It's kind of like this weird thing. Thank you again to Alon for joining me today. You guys had a ton of questions, which is the whole point of this while we do them live. If you have any more after the fact, feel free to drop them in the comments. We keep an eye on them, and I'm sure Alon will be out there too. I did kind of put him on the spot, so check out our Instagram after this, at Murphy's Magic. We may just pop up for a few minutes over there to give you a little bonus action. So if you haven't yet, make sure you are following us over there too, at Murphy's Magic, and it'll be a good time. So guys, please do stay safe. Stay very, very safe. If you can, stay close to home. Also, a couple quick updates for you before I get out of here. Number one is next week on Monday, I've got Ryan Schlutz with me. It's the debut of his brand new book, False Anchors. It's like the whole collective series together. He's going to be with me live to tell you everything about it. It's going to be pretty cool. Then next Wednesday, I've got another mentalist. I'm all about the mental stuff right now. I've got Colin Cloud. Colin Cloud from the Shin Lim show Limitless. Colin Cloud's going to be on with me. That'll be fun. And then the week after that, I just confirmed this morning, Matt Johnson. Matt Johnson, the escape artist that's been everywhere. He blew up on Britain's Got Talent. He then went on to do some other shows. There was a World's Best show here in the States. Traveling, touring, an escape artist / magician. Great guy. You know him. He's also created some killer stuff. So I'm going to have him 2 weeks from then on the 8th. So exciting stuff. And I also just saw, if you haven't seen it yet, ABC yesterday or Monday just announced that they're going to air a David Blaine special on ABC April 1st. So put that on the calendar. Yes, David Blaine popping up on TV April 1st. I forget the time. I think it's 10, but don't hold me to it. Have a look. It's exciting. Anytime big magic's on TV, I want you guys to know about it. So if you don't know about that yet, now you do. David Blaine popping on TV on April 1st. Awesome stuff. So that's it for now, guys. Have a great rest of your day. Please do stay safe. Stay very, very close to home if you can. Don't go out. Things are getting pretty serious. I know a lot of people are on lockdown. So that's it for me. Thank you again for the support. If you haven't yet, drop a like on this and a comment, and you're automatically entered to win your choice of any at the table lecture. Had a lot to get in there, but I think I got it in as quick as I could. So again, round of applause for Alon New. Yes, yes. And all you guys, definitely appreciate the support. And I will catch you guys next time. Hop on over to Instagram. I think I'm going to hop